The orchard gave them 2 months, 60 mornings to wake to the same light, 60 nights to lie close. But even the longest harvest has its end. And now, only 5 days remain. 5 days to finish their list. 5 days to hold on to what they built. 5 days before goodbye becomes real. The orchard has watched them from the first awkward touches, to the first kiss, to every moment that became more than they expected. This is where it all gathers. The last fruit, the last kiss beneath the trees, the last night before parting. This is Beneath the Tangerine Trees, Chapter 7. It was more than a kiss. The morning had barely begun. The light was still faint, too weak to climb the hills, the room holding on to the night's chill. Eugene was asleep, deeper than he had been in days. One hand curled loose against the pillow, his lips parted slightly, a slow, steady breath, slipping out with each rise of his chest. The blanket had pulled half down. Han moved carefully around the room, every action measured against the stillness. He bent to pick up his shirt from the chair, lifting it without a scrape. The floor groaned once beneath him, and he froze, eyes flicking back to Eugene. Nothing. The boy didn't stir. Han slipped out into the washroom, water splashing sharp against his skin, cold enough to steal his breath. Most mornings, he would have laced his shoes after, jogged the orchard rows until the sun rose, until his legs ached and the day felt lighter. But not this morning. Today, the run could wait. When Han stepped back inside, the room hadn't changed. Eugene hadn't changed. Blanket high, lashes dark against his skin. Han sat at the edge of the floor bed, towel tossed aside. He leaned back on his palms and let his gaze linger, piece by piece. The faint hollow in his cheek, pressed in by sleep. The way his fingers twitched once, then stilled. The steady curve of his breath, unbothered, unaware. Han tried to memorize it, as if staring long enough might carve it into memory. He thought of all the things he would miss. Not the sharp teasing, not even the kisses. But this, the quiet, the ordinary, the proof that someone could rest this close to him and trust the morning to come. He thought back to the first night on the floor bed, Eugene stiff beside him, the space between them wide as a wall. Now, there was no space at all, only this steady breathing. Eugene stirred, lashes fluttering, his eyes finally opening. Heavy with sleep, they found Han watching him. His voice was low, rough at the edges, but touched with quiet amusement as he asked, "You watching me sleep?" Han smirked, sharp and quick, but the weight in his chest stayed. "No," he said lightly, tone cutting like a knife. "Just making sure you're still breathing." Eugene gave a small laugh, muffled as he turned onto his side. Han let the smirk fade, but his eyes didn't move away. For a moment, they only looked at each other. No words, no sound but the orchard outside, as if even the leaves were waiting. The orchard carried its rhythm as it always had. Branches swayed, insects hummed in their hidden places. The scent of peel and earth hung warm in the air, but their movement slowed. Not lazy, not distracted, just slower, as if neither of them wanted the work to end. A crate sat open at Han's feet, half filled. He leaned against it, rolling a tangerine in his hand, thumb pressing against the skin until the oils clung to him. When he grew restless, he tossed it into the air, caught it with a slap of palm. Up again, down again. The rhythm steady, almost careless. Across from him, Eugene stacked fruit into neat rows. He worked slowly, with care, wiping dirt from each one, pausing longer than necessary. as if the act itself might buy them more time. When he straightened, his eyes shifted toward the counter at the edge of the house. The list was there, folded, creased, edges softened from weeks of being opened and closed. The ink had blurred where their fingers had smudged it. Words written in uneven lines, some bold, some faint. They had made it in laughter, scribbling down moments they thought might never happen, daring themselves to fill it. Now most of it was marked through. Eating fruit straight from the branch, baking until the kitchen filled with sugar and peel, staying up until dawn, whispering words they couldn't remember in the morning. And the word kiss, written more than once, each mark bolder than the last, as though repetition could pin it to memory. Han caught the fruit again and tossed it higher this time, grinning at his own carelessness. "Looks like we're nearly perfect students," he said, his tone sharp, a grin flickering across his mouth. "Almost the whole list done." Eugene brushed his palm against his pants, then reached for the paper. He smoothed it open, eyes tracing down each cross-out line, until they stopped at the bottom. Lonely Rock. The words sat bare, untouched. No mark through them, no memory attached. He stared at it too long, the silence gathering around him. Then he folded the paper slowly, carefully, as though gentleness might soften what it meant. "Let's leave this one out," he said finally, voice steady. "I'm not lonely." Han caught the tangerine mid-air and didn't throw it again. His lip twitched, the way they always did, when he wanted to cut through heaviness with a joke. But nothing came. The orchard seemed to notice. A branch shifted through the air was still. Even the crates felt too loud when the wood cracked under Eugene's touch. Eugene set the folded page back on the crate, leaving his hand there a moment longer than needed. His fingers pressed flat, as if holding the words in place might change them. When he pulled away, the silence remained. Han leaned back against the crate, fruit still resting in his palm. He watched Eugene from the corner of his eye, but said nothing. And Eugene, with the page still warm in his hand, didn't speak either. It wasn't an empty silence. It wasn't heavy. It was full of what they had said already, and of everything they never would. The orchard had thinned. Rows once bowed with bright fruit now stood lighter, branches half bare. What clung to them were the strays. Sweet, but not for market. Good for juice, for jam. Desserts maybe. But desserts needed someone to eat them, and soon, no one would be here for that. Han set down a half-filled crate and rubbed the back of his neck, the work abandoned before it was finished. He glanced once at the rows, then at Eugene, and let a crooked smile curve across his mouth. "Don't worry," Han said, voice easy, almost careless. "I can manage the rest." Eugene's lips parted, as if to argue, but the words caught. The silence between them already carried too much. They left the tools where they stood, crates half packed, fruit still clinging, the orchard unfinished. Their steps fell into rhythm as they drifted down the path. The grass whispered underfoot, the breeze tugged at their sleeves. The scent of citrus hung heavy, sharp, and sweet. Neither spoke, neither needed to. Both knew where the path led. It brought them to the same place. Here, beneath the tangerine trees, fruit had scattered into the dirt like marbles. Laughter had broken into surprise. A first kiss had come. Now there was no surprise. Han stepped closer, slow, certain, no joke in his eyes. The space between them dissolved. When his lips met Eugene's, the kiss was unhurried, but not soft. It carried weight. The warmth of mouths pressing closer, breath caught between them, the ache of something ending, even as it deepened. Eugene's hand rose to Han's shoulder, then slid up to the back of his neck, holding him there, not pulling harder, not letting go. Their breaths tangled, the orchard pressing close around them. The air itself seemed to still. When they parted, their foreheads stayed close. Eugene's eyes opened slowly, his voice low, almost pleading. Once more. Han's breast caught. A faint laugh escaped him, not sharp, not mocking, but warm and unsteady. And then he kissed him again. This time longer, deeper. The orchard stood around them, still as memory already foaming. Branches swayed once, but no fruits fell. The silence wrapped tight, carrying everything they couldn't say. The orchard slipped behind them. Branches bowed and rows of green gave way to the open road. Han drove, both hands steady on the wheel, though his chest was not. Beside him, Eugene's father sat silent, eyes fixed on the stretch ahead, his breast deep but uneven. In the back, Eugene leaned into the window, his mother beside him, whispering small reminders about the bags, about timing. Her voice was gentle, but the words passed like air. The road wound them out of the fields. Green hills softened into farmland, then into concrete. The air lost its sweetness, replaced with heat rising from the road. Eugene shifted once, shoulders brushing the glass. His reflection blinked back at him from the window. He glanced forward at Han's profile, then dropped his gaze again. Han didn't look back, but his grip on the wheel tightened. From the passenger seat, his father cleared his throat, a sound meant to steady the silence, but it faded as quickly as it came. The city gathered around them, buildings stacked higher, signs pointed forward, departures, arrivals. Han exhaled once, long and low, as if trying not to let it sound. They parked. The car fell quiet, engine ticking as it cooled. Then doors opened. The noise of the airport spilled in, wheels clattering, voice echoing, announcements calling out. They crossed the concrete, through the sliding glass doors, into the wide mouths of the terminal. The air smelled of coffee, steel, and fuel. Every sound echoed too big, too sharp, swallowing anything small. Han walked at Eugene's side. The checkpoint rose ahead. Belts and trays, lines of people, officers waving them through. Here, only 3 could go forward. Han stopped. His hand tightened on the strap of the bag, then fell away. Eugene's father moved first into the line. His mother touched Eugene's arm, murmured something only for him. Eugene turned back. Then he stepped forward and closed the distance. Han opened his arm without a word. Eugene pressed into him, the hug rougher, longer than either had meant it to be. Han's chin touched his hair, Eugene's hand fisted in his shirt. Neither moved, neither let go. Finally, Eugene drew back. A half smile flickered at his lips, heavy but sure. Then, almost shy, he lifted a hand in a salute, crooked, awkward, not quite proper. But it carried weight all the same. "I'll return as a man," he said. His voice wavered, but the words held. Han's chest tightened, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Eugene lowered his hand, turned, and followed his parents toward the line. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't need to. He turned. Han stood rooted, watching every step. At the screen door, Eugene looked back once. Han lifted a hand, not a wave, just a steady hold in the air. Eugene answered with the same, brief, certain, and then the door slid shut between them. Han drove back alone. The passenger seat was empty now. The road out to the airport curved past glass and steel, past signs pointing to gates. Traffic closed in, horns sharp in the air. Block by block, the city loosened. Buildings thinned into houses, houses thinned into fields. fields bent into hills. Green returned, the land rolling wider, the orchard waiting beyond it. But the drive felt longer this time. Every mile dragged, every turn pressed slower, as if the road itself didn't want to end. Han's hand stayed tight on the wheel. He kept his eyes forward, never to the side. And he thought, in 10 more days, he would be on this road again. Not returning to the orchard, not to Eugene, but leaving Jeju behind, back to Seoul. The thought pressed in heavier than the silence. The orchard would not wait for either of them. Months later, Han was back in Seoul. The city pressed around him, glassed and steel stacked high, street restless, wires cutting the sky into lines. It was nothing like Jeju, nothing like the orchard. He stood at the counter of a narrow post office. The smell of ink and dust around him. The envelope was already sealed, the address written clear. His handwriting looked sharper here, almost too neat. He dropped the letter into the slot, a soft scrape of paper against metal. Outside, the air was thick with rain on concrete. Han carried a folder under his arm, rent papers, cost sheets, list with numbers and names. He walked quickly, eyes forward, until he reached the narrow door he had claimed. The shop wasn't much yet. At the center lay one page, edges curled from being touched too often, a hand-drawn sign with 4 words, "Beneath the Tangerine Trees." Han traced the letter with his thumb, not to smudge them, but to ground them, to make the idea feel real beneath his skin. He sat down, the city noise muffled into a low hum outside the glass. Opening a notebook, he flipped through pages filled with receipts, supplier contacts, rent calculations. But at the top of the current page, written darker than anything else, one line anchored everything: fruit from Eugene's orchard. He closed the notebook, set the pen aside, and leaned back in the chair. The shop was still empty, but it was enough to keep moving forward, enough to wait. 3 months had passed. Training camp was behind Eugene. Now he was posted, a rhythm of army life pressed into every hour. Drills, orders, shouts cutting through the air. He was still getting used to it, the weight of the uniform, the way the days stacked without pause. But when they ran, he was less breathless than the others. The orchard rows had trained him. The jog was Han carving strength into his legs, air into his chest. He had hated them once. Now he carried them like a secret advantage. On his bunk, Eugene unfolded a letter. The handwriting was sharp, familiar. Han's voice seemed to rise from the page as he read, and for a moment, the barracks wall felt farther away. A small smile tugged at him. He folded the letter closed. Then Eugene set the letter aside, leaned back, and closed his eyes. He thought to himself, "So did I get to kiss him?" The words caught in his chest. Well, it was more than a kiss. It was a promise. Just 15 more months, and we'll start again, together. This was Beneath the Tangerine Trees, a story of orchard mornings, of lists written in laughter, of kisses that became promises, and of goodbyes that were never really the end. Han found his way back to Seoul, carrying the orchard into his hands, turning memory into something new. Eugene carried the orchard in his breath. 15 months is marked, not by loneliness, but by the hope of what waited after. And though the orchard grew quiet, their story does not. It lingers, in every letter, in every fruit that ripens, in every promise not yet broken. Thank you for listening to this journey. The full compilation of Beneath the Tangerine Trees will be coming soon. And after this, new stories, new faces, new places to fall into. Until then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.